up, good people? Listen, this is Miss Turner, your parent and family engagement liaison here at Churchland High School, coming to you with yet another Trucker Connect. And today, as always, this is a special one. I have Stephen Dent, our new graduation coach here at Churchland High School. But we're going to put a little twist on things. Instead of him coming and speak directly from the graduation coach standpoint, he is also the founder of No Father, No Excuse. And living in this age, we understand that the family structure may not be that traditional setting. And we have a lot of single parent households that are now taking full responsibility for their kids. And so we wanted to make sure that we took and had a special moment where we understand that things may be different, whether you're taking in the only parent in the household doing virtual learning. We wanted to make sure that we have resources and support to let you know that one, you are not alone. Two, you can do this. And three, there are resources available to you. So I'm not even going to mess up his intro. I'm going to let him go ahead and introduce himself. Everybody give Mr. Dent a round of applause.
Thank you for that introduction. Like she said, my name is Steve Dent. I go by Coach Dent. You don't have to call me Mr. unless you absolutely want to. I am the graduation coach at Churchland High School, and I am the founder of the mentor organization No Father, No Excuse, where we mentor kids who are without the presence of an active father in their lives between the ages of 6 and 17.
Wow. And it's much needed. I think in a lot of cases, you have a lot of people starting, foundations, mentorship. It's something that's really needed because of those relationships. But I think get to a place that we first must know what it feels like to have the need. So how did you start No Father, No Excuse?
Oh man, it started when I was about, I want to say I was about 25, 26. And I grew up, without my father in my life. It was one of those situations where my father was consistent. It's almost like how some people view relationships. Like when you first meet that person, they're consistent, they're taking you out, this, that, and the third. And then all of a sudden there's a drop off and you're trying to figure out what happened. My father, he was consistently in my life until he got divorced. When him and my mom split, and then when he got remarried, and then once he got remarried, there was a major drop off from me seeing my dad every other week to me seeing my dad maybe 3 times a year, to my dad even forgetting birthdays, Christmas, stuff like that. So I blame my dad for every single thing that happened that was a negative. I went from having over a 3.0 GPA in middle school to barely graduating high school with a 2.2. I blame my father for that. My lack of ability to defend myself in school when I used to get bullied. I blame my father for that. Any shortcomings I had, I used to always blame my father, even as an adult, not feeling like I was fully prepared for life after graduation, for what was to come in the outside world, financial responsibilities and etc. And I was at a point where I absolutely hated where I was in life. I hated my job. I hated my mindset. I hated my body. I hated everything. And I had to look myself in the mirror one day and realize that I'm still my own man. And regardless of my circumstance, yes, we have obstacles that we have to overcome on a daily basis. Everybody has struggles. Everybody has different things. But at the same time, our destiny is still in our hands. And our road may be a little tougher than others, but we still have to do what we have to do to be successful. And I have to realize I'm my own man, and my success, regardless of who's in my life, is still my responsibility, and I need to make something of it. So it started with me developing that mindset at first. And then I was sitting in church one day, and God gave me a vision of me years down the line being awarded for mentoring kids who didn't have their fathers in their life. And I kind of went to prayer about it. And I was able to establish No Father, No Excuse at a church. And that actually did happen. While I was at USAA, working for USAA, I was awarded by the CEO of the company for having a mentor organization for kids without fathers. So that's how that came into play. And, the church had a serious need for it because a lot of single mothers. So I was able to build that base at the church. And then people from outside of the church started reaching out to me. And then we eventually transitioned from just being a church-based organization out of the church to being an entire nonprofit. So, yeah.
Wow. That is absolutely amazing. I knew it had to be some meat behind that story. You know,
Yeah,
and it comes from a personal place. I think in a lot of cases, our stories are intended to save lives. And so when
right,
we're in it, in a lot of cases, we can't see. So that's where that rage, that's where that frustration and things of that nature, or that blaming, or, just giving up on certain things. Because when you think about it, a parent is our first reflection of love. A parent
right,
becomes that first individual that teaches us about relationship. Parents become that first person that stands as that role model. And so when we have
right,
someone that is no longer in that position or accepting that assignment fully, we find ourselves losing our identity in the very people that are a part of that which we should be establishing. And so
absolutely,
stories are intended to save lives. And so now you've taken and flipped what many would perceive as being a negative and turned it positive just by making
right,
a choice. And I think that's an
right,
important thing for, kids that may be in a single parent household. You are not the blame. And you have to choose every day to not become the thing that you hate. And I
absolutely,
found myself
absolutely,
in those type of situations where here it is, I'm frustrated because of not being able to see 24/7. And, you begin to ask questions and things of that nature. But in
right,
that time, you still have to make that choice to say, you know what? I have to make sure that I reflect that which I desire to have, opposed to me
absolutely.
allowing that to become the reflection that I project on other people. So I applaud you. And so in
Appreciate
those
it.
developmental years, did you find yourself becoming angry? I know you said your GPA dropped and things of that nature, but did you
Right.
find yourself living out what it is that you may see in the male students that you may be working with in a single parent household, or better yet, the minority? Like, what are some key things that you think is the issue as it pertains to the absence?
Yeah, for sure. When I was a kid, I wouldn't necessarily say I was angry. I experienced more of my anger issues as an adult. Now, everybody's situation is different. I've seen, some of the kids I've worked with have anger issues as a result. But for me, it was more so hurt.
Mhm.
I used to lose sleep at night trying to figure out why my dad doesn't love me, or if he even does love me. There would literally be times in high school where I'm supposed to be taking a test and I can't concentrate because my father was supposed to pick me up that weekend, and we were sitting in the window waiting for him with our bags packed, and he never showed up.
Yeah.
So it was more so hurt, if anything, and became a distraction on top of what you're already dealing with inside of your home.
Mhm.
Everybody has different situations going on inside of their home. For me, my situation, I had a mother who she absolutely, wanted me to go to college, and she was willing to do everything she could to see me and, make those sacrifices and make sure I went to college. So I had a good household, but I had a stepdad I had to adjust to as well. And
Mm.
me and him we weren't necessarily on the same page. So I had to adjust to that as well in high school, which was a major adjustment. So on top of things you already got going on in the house, it can be a lot. And from what I see for kids, especially now, the hard part is just trying to get them to turn that corner and realize, hey, like, all right, so let me take my mind off of this circumstance and let me really focus on what's really important. Let me adjust my thinking and put it into its proper place. Yes, my father is not around, but at the same time, I still, have to do this, I have to do that. And that's the tough part for kids, trying to make that, mental adjustment to prioritize what's really important. So I mean, the reason why I named the No Father No Excuse was because yes, your dad is not in your life, and we're not here to replace your dad. I tell all my kids, we're never gonna replace your dad. Like, you have one father, and you are not to have a grudge against that father, because there are gonna become times in life where you're gonna do things that might be crazy. You might do some wild stuff, and you don't want people to judge you, regardless of your circumstances or your mistakes. So don't hold no grudges. And but at the same time, those justifications, as far as, because the main thing we all miss with our fathers is not anything dealing with money. I haven't asked my dad for a gift since I was 16 years old. It's not anything dealing with money. It's the time, and it's the conversations. Like me being able to call my father when I'm in a bad place and just have somebody to vent to, or us just going out and playing basketball. Like you, for fathers that's watching this video, that will listen to this, you have no idea just waking up in the morning, taking your kid to school or wherever it may be, taking them to McDonald's. You have no idea how something that simple makes such an impact in the life of a child, because those are moments that they will always be able to remember, and the conversations. The biggest thing I've always took away from my father was the conversations that we were able to have. My father gave me the biggest advice for marriage, and it was rare. So um that's the things that we miss. And then when we see other kids and they have that, and even some kids that take it for granted, it can be a struggle. So once you get kids to kind of like try to turn that corner and they can see, all right, my father's not around, but I got Ferg, I got Dent, I got Shaq, I got Mike, I got whoever, I can lean on to get that advice, and I can push through life. That's where we can make those adjustments and get them to kind of like turn that curve.
Wow, that was a wealth right there. Time is the one thing that is constantly in motion.
Yeah,
Money will come and go, people will come and go, but time is always ticking. And in
right.
that time that we do have, I would agree, having that time is something that ideally is priceless. That,
It's
as
priceless.
a parent
Yeah,
myself, we think is the big elaborate things, or we're always measuring, or, I'm working a 9 to 5, and in that time of working that 9 to 5, to make sure that they have the latest shoes, the PlayStation 5 that's coming out, or
yeah,
sure, they got lights and things. Those things, you'll see it tossed to the corner. After a
right,
couple months, you'll see that they're not paying attention to it. Why?
right,
Because in that moment, it may be the hype, but really to take and spend time with your kids, because there will come a time where those things are not going to be there. There will come a time
right.
where, it'll lose its value. But when it comes to those memories that you have, those are the things that'll last a lifetime.
A
And
lifetime.
yeah,
A
so
lifetime. I remember my high school graduation, and I remember walking into my graduation, and at that time it was in the gym. So we only had 4 tickets apiece. So I had a ticket for my mom, I had a ticket for my brother, my sister, and my dad. And I remember walking in, and I sat down, and you know how everybody does when you're in graduation, you look around for your people.
yeah.
And I looked around, and I saw my mom, I saw my sister, I saw my brother, but I didn't see my dad. And so I kind of looked at my sister, like, kind of gave her like the lip reading version of like, where's Pops? And she was like, she kind of just shrugged her shoulders, and he wasn't there. And then to come to find out, he was waiting outside in the car, because I didn't have a ticket for my stepmom, which was something that was completely out of my control. And so yes, he took me to dinner afterwards and stuff like that, and we chilled. But I never forget that moment of
Right.
looking in the stands and him not being there.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely the time, and just being present is priceless, like you said.
Yeah, man, I could only imagine like that feeling. And I think in a lot of cases, parents have got to understand it's not about being perfect, it's about being
Yeah,
present. But in being
right,
present, you can be present and not present. So, say for
right,
instance, you may be in the household, you may be there
right.
every day, but in that time, if you're on a video game, on your cell phone, telling your kid to get out your face and go in the room, you are not being present. If not sitting
Yeah,
at the table working on homework with them. And it goes back to that time. And so, not
yeah,
being perfect, but being present, but making sure that you're being present when you're present. Like, there's a lot of
right.
people being thrown around. But, my daughter, like, she saved my life. And so, the crazy thing is, in some cases, how cycles repeat themselves. And
Yeah,
so you can take and think that you've done everything perfectly, crossed every T and dot every I. And then when life happens, you're able to say, you know what? I grew up with that. You know,
right.
I refuse to allow the life that I have been dealt to be handed on to my daughter, like building a legacy worth following. And I think that's what parenting becomes. It becomes in
Yeah.
that instant, like, well, what are some things that you constantly have to deal with yourself on a regular basis to ensure that you don't become a reflection of that which you desire to have?
I think for the most part, I have to remind myself, especially like when it comes to my household. So me being a husband, that's and me, my even though we're not a religious based organization, my faith, is number one. So I have to be consistent with that and be transparent.
Right.
Me being a husband, I show my kids on a daily, on a regular basis, what it's like to actually like love. Because the one thing I did have growing up, my father wasn't there, and I didn't see a lot of successful relationships.
Right.
But I had I had an example in my sister and my brother-in-law. My sister and my brother-in-law got married at 21, and 26 years later, they're still married.
Wow.
And yeah, my brother-in-law, he didn't talk a lot at all. Like, we had conversations, of course, but outside of that, he wasn't a talker. But I saw his actions every day. I
Mm.
saw his actions all the time, and how he treated my sister. And he showed me a true example of love and how you should treat a woman. Because a lot of the kids that we come across, because of this day and age and the things that they're being taught in the streets, they don't have a respect for women that we grew up having. So
Mm.
I made sure to be that example. With them, I made sure I'm consistent, because that's the thing that they're missing: consistency. If I'm not consistent, I'm creating the same cycle in their lives that their father has already created. So I make sure I'm consistent, and with me, it's just making sure I'm taking care of myself. Some things I have slacked off on. Like for example, one thing I'm kind of focusing on now is my health. So I'm showing the kids now, like, look, like, I'm getting myself together. I've lost almost 30 pounds. I found something to get myself, in shape, kind of taking care of myself. But to directly answer your question, for me, in regards to, I just have to remember what I hated growing up and remind myself not to be that. I remember my brother actually fell into that trap. My brother actually fell into that same trap of being the one thing we grew up seeing, with our father or whatever, as far as the complacency, not being able to find like the right job and etc. And I remember my brother got into an accident one day that changed his life forever. He got into an accident and he left the scene. And for any of you who don't know, if you leave the scene of an accident, that's an automatic felony. I mean, there's nothing you can do about that. And he knew he was getting a felony. He knew he was going to get caught. And he walked into my room one day and he said, "Steve, don't ever be like me. Don't ever be like me." And I carried those words forever, because I've seen the struggles that my brother has had to go through.
Yeah.
And I constantly remind myself, I can't do that. Especially now, because I have people that depend on me. I have a wife that depends on me. I have these kids that depend on me. Not just no father, no excuse. Like, I have a bad habit, and they tell you as a mentor, and I'm sure that they tell you as a mentor not to get attached.
Oh,
They
that's
tell you
impossible.
they tell you not to get attached, and they tell you, you can't save everybody.
Yeah.
That's what they tell you, but it's easier said than done.
Right.
And I've maintained a lot of contacts, whether it was me being a youth pastor, me being at Lakeland High School, and now me at Churchland. You never know who's watching, and I have to make sure that when I step out every day, that I'm setting an example and I'm presenting myself not only to be an example for my kids, but not be a hypocrite and fall into the same trap of the stuff I hated growing up.
Wow. So having a level of accountability,
Yeah,
like not just for yourself, but definitely to the kids that are watching. Because in the time of having my daughter, like that's been the most mind blowing thing is that they are listening and they are watching.
yeah,
And when
yeah,
time presents itself, they're going to prove it. And so in that time, you take and think about, not having a father present on a daily basis. That absence from them not being able to know the worth because of the absence of a father, they begin to tap out on themselves. And so,
Right.
the crazy thing is, as you say, easier said than done, but we become that reflection. And so parents understanding that role and that assignment that we have, many times
Right.
we think parents will think they're a gift to kids. I've said this before, but kids are a gift to us. And I realized
Yeah.
that firsthand with my 6-year-old, like, seeing the purest form of love. When you were little, when I was little, still daddy couldn't do no wrong. Like he was still on the
Right.
pedestal until we got to a certain age. And
Yeah.
taking and seeing that purest form of acceptance. Like I remember when my daughter laid on my chest, I was scared to have a girl. I was like, man, I'm gonna
Yeah.
drop the ball. I'm gonna fail her because I may not be the girliest girl and things of that nature. But when she laid on my chest that first day and she looked in my eyes, she didn't see the low self-esteem, the depression, the insecurities, my failures, my mistakes. She saw
Right.
the perfect in who I am. And so understanding parents, we'll never be perfect. I can't stress that. But to take and make sure that we are reflecting not what we've been through, but what it is
Yeah.
that we hope to at least plant seeds for our kids. I had to get to the point of redirecting even communication and discipline.
Yeah.
And so, the first thing I knew about was whippings, things of that nature.
That's the
But it's
other thing we knew.
okay, right, to get to the point where you say, I need to correct the dysfunction that has become normal.
Right.
So in parenting, what if we were dealt with the way that we deal with our kids? Like
Yeah.
that's where I'm like, hold up, I got to give her a level of grace first because she's sick, so she's still learning. And so,
Right.
secondly, what if I dealt with her and it was dealt back with me? Like a grown person what would that look like? I don't want nobody yelling at me. So how is it I can yell at her or speaking at her rather than talking to her? And so
Right.
I know that you've had relationships with a lot of kids. So what are some things that you find yourself having to take in and like pump the brakes? Like first, knowing that they're not your kids, but a lot of
Yeah.
times kids just need that punching bag. And that's what my mental had to get. Because respect is key for me. Like you can
Yeah.
let me know, we can talk about everything, but you're going to respect me. But it had to get to a point that I didn't take everything personal. So what
Right.
are some things
Right.
that, could ideally be advice to that single parent at home right now? And I know you're a part of No Father, No Excuse, but this goes to, I could start No Mother, No Excuse, because
Right.
a child coming from a mother's wound and she not being present, I'm not
Right.
saying it's a greater hurt than the father not being there, but it hurts just as much. And so for the diverse families that we may have, what is
Yeah.
some advice that you can say that when those blows come that may not be personally at you, like what are some things that you find yourself doing to not take it personal and to correct that
Right.
behavior in love?
Well, I think, and I was just watching something this weekend that reminded me of this. I think we have to, when we're dealing with people in general, not even just kids, we have to make room for their failures. We
Right.
have to make room for their faults. So for me, the biggest thing for that has helped me out when I'm dealing with kids, I have to mentally prepare myself to expect to hear anything
Mm-hmm.
when I'm talking to them and not necessarily flip out on them because it's something I don't think they should be doing or something I wouldn't do. But just make room to hear their faults, to hear them as they are, give them a chance to express themselves, and then to kind of walk them through, relate to them, empathize with them. Cause that's, I mean, when anybody is venting, really all they want is empathy. They want you may not understand the shoes that they're in, but they're seeking that empathy, and that's how that trust is built. But I make sure that I help, empathize with them, but I'm walking them through, how we can get out of it and, the right way to do certain things. I remember one of the first times I chilled with my boys from No Father, No Excuse, and, I picked like 4 of them up and we went to the mall. And I was just having a real conversation with them. And one of them had mentioned that they had already slept with like over 25 girls, and the kid was 16 at the time. And at first, I shrugged it off, like, I don't believe you, you lying. And then I actually thought about his situation and the freedom that he had, and I was like, you know what? With the amount of people I see coming in and out of his house, he could be right. So what I did was I put together a workshop in my house, and I had a sleepover at my crib. And one weekend when my wife was out of town and the boys came through, and I had some of my boys come through, and we just sat down. We had a real conversation with them about sex, protecting yourselves, and stuff like that, and just went through. So I didn't spaz out on him because I heard that he had sex with over 25 women. But at the same time, like, I recognize that this is something that I don't need to discard. It's something that has to be addressed, and we have to do that. I think the number one thing in order to get through our kids as well is to be able to relate and also be transparent. Like, nobody wants to talk to anybody that hasn't been through things themselves. And when I first had my first No Father No Excuse meeting, and I told my entire story, like, I gave you the short version. Like, I went into details for them, like, bit by bit, from the time because I always tell everybody when I start my story that my very first memory ever as a kid, the furthest thing I could think of, is that the morning I woke up and I ran into my room, and apparently I already had a habit of running into my parents' room, and my mom had a water bed, and I used to jump on the water bed all the time and stuff like that. And my pops wasn't there. And I asked my mom, where was he? And that's when she broke the news to me that they had split up. You know what I'm saying? So, like, I remember telling that whole story, and like three of them just broke out crying before I was even done. Now we just have to be able to relate and be transparent. Nobody wants to talk to someone that they can't relate to, that can't understand the issues they're going through, but they want to understand that you're real and that you're authentic too. And so being able to relate and be transparent, man. Like, I've told, when I mentor these kids, they know all of my flaws. They know everything that I did wrong growing up. From the time, I was in ninth grade and I stole some stats out of a gas station. I made it a habit and then got caught. To when I was in college and I smoked weed. Like, they know everything, because I use my struggles as a way of saying, yes, I've done this, I've done that, but this is where I am now. Like, I don't even, if you go to my Facebook page, I haven't deleted any of my old college pictures, wow, anything like that. I kept everything up there. A lot of people, they'll switch profiles.
Oh yeah.
I kept all of it up there because and from my perspective, if somebody asked me why I did that, and I told them, I said, you could scroll to the bottom and you could see all my flaws and everything that I used to do that was real reckless, throwing up middle fingers and pictures, etc. But when you scroll up, there's no way you can deny my progression. There's no way you can deny where I'm at now. There's no way you can deny me evolving as a person, becoming better. And there's no way you can see that I'm not a much better person now than I was then. So yeah, you have to be transparent and being able to relate as a mentor for sure.
Man, I applaud you for that. People be going through them yearly clean sweeps. See,
yeah, nah.
They profile be like switching it, but that's vitally important for our kids to be able to, as you say, see that, because they could care less until they know you care. And in a lot of cases, we think that we are protecting our kids by them not hearing the truth. But if we don't get the truth to them, they're going to hear it in other ways. And which would you prefer? To take and see the truth at home, or to see a truth that continued down a dark path? And that's why I feel like a lot of young men are going and just seeking that acceptance and seeking the validation, along with seeking an example. So if I can take a look and see, okay, my mama working a 9 to 5, barely can pay bills. Homeboy up the street only does three things, 3 hours worth of things, and he has a whole month's worth of rent.
Right.
I've got to be transparent. And in that transparency, we have to understand our kids are human. They are going down a road. There's some things we can't protect them from. But at the same time, having that healthy space. I remember this one day, I think I asked my kids, what is one thing that they wish that their parents did? And to
Mm.
see how many kids just said to listen.
Wow.
This one girl was like, I just wish my mama would just listen. I don't even talk to her anymore because I already know her response. Because, yeah, I'm making decisions that she's not going to be proud of. But, man, I'm not even going to try to talk to her anymore because she won't listen. And in that moment, I realized the power of listening. Yeah, you're
Uh, I,
going to be cringeworthy. You're going to be like,
yeah.
but at the
I
same time,
I tell you, like, because other people are gonna watch this video. In all transparency, like my mom, because she had two boys growing up as a single mother, she had to be that mother. So she wasn't our friend. She was a mother. She's the
yeah,
best mother. I tell people all the time, like she's the best mother I could ever ask for. But we never had a friend relationship, and it wasn't until later on in life where she realized that she needed to kind of be a friend and be some, because she realized that when I had things going on personally, I would go to other people before I even came to her, and a lot of times I never even came to her. So she tried to establish that relationship, but it was so hard because it was 20 plus years of me not wanting to get lectured every time I came to my mom with a situation. So if I can tell parents anything, like you definitely you want to be that parent. You want your kids to feel and respect you. But at the same time, you also want them to have an avenue where they can at least come to you. Because kids, a lot of the kids, they don't have that relationship with God. They don't, and you don't want them to go to the streets for somebody to vent to. So you want them to have a place where they can go. And if it's not you, if they don't feel comfortable with you, then do what you can to try to find somebody that they can go to, and like you said, just have somebody to listen. I mean, it's so a lot of times, I would go to my mom, and I would want her to listen, but based on how she was raised and how she came up, she just didn't know how. She only thing she knew how to do was lecture and critique, and I a lot of times I didn't need that. I needed that empathy, and I just needed somebody to listen like they care. So you hit the nail on the head for sure.
oh yeah, man. That's where that cycle, like at some point we have got to say enough is enough within the families. Like, the level of communication, I had to get to the drawing board to say, you know what, this is dysfunctional. It's time for me to correct it. And, like I said, finding ways to correct that the dysfunction that has become normal. Somebody cussing 24/7, that may be how they dialogue with each other in the household. Somebody taking and being angry and throwing stuff, that may be the level of communication. And I know that this is for parents, but teachers understanding too. No, we don't ask to be parents to kids, but in actuality, we become that next connection or relationship of that which may be void in their
Right.
lives. So it's like, don't sign up to be a teacher if you're not going to go all in, because at the end of the day, kids are a reflection of us as adults. Is either a reflection of what was not corrected, what was modeled, or what was allowed. And so there comes a point where we have got to step up to the plate that, yeah, I may not be the blood parent, but at the same time, for whatever reason, God has assigned you to be in my presence at this time, and I'm gonna make sure I steward that time. And so for
Yeah.
parents to just understand too, like I said, man, you are never going to be perfect, but the absence is not a perfect solution. Like, let me go get myself together, or I'm not good enough, so let me walk away. That's the worst thing, because you could be a broke father, can never buy
Yeah.
your kid anything, but you sat down at that table for dinner every night. You sat down at that table, you did homework, you walked them to school, you played catch with them. That is worth millions, billions. It's time now where I wish that even as a young lady, a female, to have the presence of my father to be that protector. Like, where are you
Yeah.
going with my daughter? Like, nah, like, you don't even
Yeah.
look like you have yourself together. You go try to do this again, because the value and the worth of my daughter, I'm not going to entrust it to any and everybody. And so, to be honest, if I can be truthful, most of what we deal with in the world and what we see and what we can criticize and say wrong, it is a reflection of our household at the beginning.
It's crazy because we mentor girls too, and the number one thing I saw with my girls, like it was crazy the difference between mentoring boys that don't have their fathers in their life, and girls that don't have their fathers in their life. And for boys, well, for both, it's time. But it's certain traits that starts to happen, certain defects. And with boys, you have the anger issues and stuff like that, and the hurt and the. I know for me, self-esteem was big for me. Self-esteem and learning how to become a man and etc. But for my girls, it was the lack of self-worth. Like my girls, like they did not know the value of their own worth. And when it came to dealing with other boys, they settle for whatever, as far as like what they would like, getting how they would get treated and etc. And I had to work with them consistently
Yeah.
on their self-worth and making them feel beautiful. And I didn't realize that for a woman, for a father to look you in your eyes and tell you and reassure you that you're beautiful and that you're worth it and that you're deserving and that you're special and that you can go out here and conquer anything in this world. I didn't know how important that was until I started mentoring girls, and they absolutely needed that. Like, I have a girl right now who's in college, and when I first met her, she did not like herself. She didn't know her worth. She was getting dogged and etc. And now she's out here. Now she's doing makeup for other girls because she started off. She would wear makeup every day just to try to make herself look beautiful.
Mm.
And now she's doing makeup for other girls to make them look beautiful and to try to help them, encourage them, etc. So that self-worth piece for girls, like that is it's crazy you touched on that because it's major. It's major, and like you said, a lot of it is a reflection of the household and what they're seeing. She saw her mom get dogged, so she didn't think her value was worth much either. So you're 100% right.
Yeah, so I mean, I think we can agree that when it comes to young males, they connect to their fathers for identity.
Yeah,
And young
yeah,
females is that self-worth, because this is the protector, this is the provider, this is the one that pours into her. This becomes a
right,
reflection of the very thing that she is to seek out in this world for companionship. And so when you have
right.
a father and his son, this becomes the standard of what a man is, what you should and should not do, how to survive, how to
Yeah,
conduct yourself. And so, man, to know that, in a lot of cases, so many people, that cycle.
mm,
I'm not good enough, so let me tap out, or I'll never be good enough. Instead of just giving it what you got, like I done said
yeah,
this 20 times, and guess what? It's coming again. You are not going to be perfect, but at the
yeah.
same
Nice.
time, when do you say enough is enough? You make a list of all of the dysfunction. You begin to identify, and if every day you commit to being a better person than what you were yesterday, or to
Right.
take and be further away, like success is not an end road. I had to change the definition of success for me. And it's in those moments of celebrating those small milestones that keeps that momentum until we achieve. But success to
Right.
me is to be a step further away from where you once were and a step closer to where you want to be. So at the end of the day, pull out a piece of paper, write down what a successful father looks like, successful
Yeah.
mother looks like. And every day you commit to at least one thing on that list, because in a lot of cases we want to achieve something, but we don't even know what it takes to achieve it. That
Yeah.
absent father may 9 times out of 10 be a reflection of the absent father in his life. Now, like I said, you could be present and not be present. And so that cycle continues. So there comes a point where you got to first identify what those things consist of, so that you can
Yeah.
set those goals and know what I'm supposed to work towards, like communicating, time management, taking and commitment, accountability. Like, you got 40, 50-year-old fathers that still blaming their daddy. You 40 and 50 now with 3 kids. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like, there comes a point where you have to let it go, and not to say that it's not important, but now you have the assignment that it's important that you don't reflect for them the very thing that was reflected for you, and you become once again the thing that you hate. And I think just getting to a place of healing, and as a brown male, shall I say, the importance of mental health, man, and knowing that I need to do what's important for my mental. You know, in our community, like what goes on in this house, stay in this house, and I'm not about to go to a therapist. But in 2020, it's time to start making that the norm. That you know what? As for me and my house, we going to counseling.
You're going to therapy.
We going to
Yeah,
therapy. We gonna do what we have to because the generation we've seen it. Insanity
yeah.
is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. And there comes a point where you say, you know what? It's time to change this.
You got to turn that corner.
Yeah. And so in that instance, what advice, I guess in closing, would you give to, the parents, the father that may be away from his kids right now, but just stumbled on the video because of somebody resharing it? What is some advice that you would just give, even to the single mother that's at home right now that could be beneficial to them in this new way of learning, whether it's the virtual or, just trying to make ends meet during this holiday time and everything? You have the floor at this moment.
I would say to that father, it's never too late. It's never too late. It's never too late. Me and my father are actually, on a good term right now. I'm actually going to see him this weekend. And it started, with one of those situations where, whenever my father would come around, it wasn't often, but like you said earlier, it was like he couldn't do no wrong. It was like whatever bad feelings I had, it went away at the time as soon as I saw him. And I thought those feelings went away, but over time, those feelings just compiled and compiled and compiled until I started having a grudge against my father. And it wasn't until 2 years ago, finally, like I drove down to North Carolina and I took my father out and, I finally expressed everything that I felt and we had a real genuine conversation. And now, like for the first time in my life, like my father hasn't heard from me in like a month. He gives me a call to see how I'm doing. Like my father, I can call him and know that he's gonna pick up the phone, or if he doesn't pick up the phone, he's gonna call me back. Like that's never happened in my life, but it's never too late to actually be that father. I know a lot of times we are, from what I've seen, fathers step away from that role because that self guilt or just thinking that the kid is gonna hate you, and the kid might, the kid, your child might hate you, but you gotta own that, accept accountability, but also work to change that. And like I said, it's never too late to step up, and be in your child's life. And for that father who's feeling, down because he can't provide the way he wants to, he's struggling at his job, he's having a hard time making ends meet. In the long run, when your child is adult, when your child is grown, they're not gonna remember that, you was only making $11, $12 an hour. They're gonna remember the time that you sacrificed to spend with them and the hard work that you showed them, and your struggles might actually lead them to live a better life because they might have seen you struggle and might not want their own kids to go through that. It doesn't mean that they don't appreciate you. It just means that you're showing them what they need to do to actually live a better life. And you don't need to get discouraged. You just need to keep progressing in life and don't settle, but still be that consistent role model in their life that they need. To that single mother, it's gonna be tough, and your kids may not turn out the way you want them to. You may have a kid that got all A's, and you may have a kid that got all F's. Don't get discouraged. God don't make no mistakes. Everything works out the way it's supposed to eventually. You have some kids that do have to learn on their own. Some kids have to, like, you got some kids that can see somebody else bump their head and it'll make them learn that lesson. And then some kids have to bump their heads themselves because they don't think that same mistake that happened to somebody else is going to happen to them. Right. They think they got it all figured out, and they have to go through trials and they have to go through tribulations. Some harder than others. Sometimes some people might have to go to jail. Some people, I know my closest friend, his life changed when he had a near death experience. He was in a gang and they had a gun to his head and they pulled the trigger, and a gun that's not supposed to jammed that day. And the cop showed up 2 seconds later and everybody ran away. And it changed his life forever. So your child may not turn out the way that you want them to all the time, but that doesn't mean give up. It's going to be discouraging. It's going to be hard at times. It's going to be depressing. You're going to cry. You're going to be frustrated. I just talked to a parent last week who was barely talking on the phone, and she was like, Mr. Dent, I've done everything I can. I don't know what else to do. And my advice for her to her was just don't give up, because in the long run, when they finally do get themselves together, they're going to remember. I have one kid out of my program. I have one kid that did not graduate. And I used to look at that as a blemish, right? Because I got like 8 kids in college. I got one kid that's graduating from the military this week, all this stuff. And I used to look at it as a blemish until this year on Father's Day, he reached out to me and he was like, "Hey man," he was like, "I just want to thank you for every time you've been there, all the stuff that you walked me through, for constantly being there, for never giving up on me. You saved my life and I appreciate it." And I realized in that moment that just because he didn't turn out perfect the way I wanted him to, doesn't mean he didn't learn anything through life. Doesn't mean that he didn't learn things to help him, because he's a father now. So it doesn't mean, he didn't learn stuff to become a better father. And he's going to continue to make flaws, but it doesn't mean that he won't eventually get it right. So my advice to that single mother is, even though it might be a struggle at times, um, just don't give up. Because at the same token, the lessons that you taught them and just being there, your child will cherish that forever. They will always remember that. And, if you give up on them, then that'll change their life in a direction that you don't want them to. So
Gotcha.
that'll be my advice.
Man, I appreciate just the time to share with you today. It's been a wealth of knowledge, and I'm just grateful for you accepting assignment and being a steward of it, a faithful steward, because of the
That's
seed of it. And so, in closing, like fathers, you are needed.
yeah,
Uh, you know, Regardless of where you currently are, you still are needed. Mothers, you are needed. And so, understanding that every time a kid is exposed to something, a seed is planted. The more that they are exposed to that very thing, it's getting watered until it becomes deeply rooted. And so, when we see our kids taking and lashing out irrationally with bad attitudes, cussing, not being present, not doing their work, that's the indication of it breaking the surface. But the most work has happened in that dark place. It's underneath the surface where it's roots. And I remember this one time I did a beautification project. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna get rid of this tree stump. And I was pull one root up. Next thing you know, I saw this thing was attached to something else. So that's low self-esteem, that's depression, that's anger, all of those things that now have been harbored, now have been warded because of the parent projecting on the kid the very struggles that they both have similar now. So instead of getting to a place of healing, it's watering that thing till it becomes rooted deeply. And it's like, man, I take and give you the new clothes and you still got a bad attitude. I've taken and done the tutoring sessions and you still not passing. Understanding that it's time for us to deal with the root of the issue within the culture, within the community, that we can take and keep doing these band-aid fixes. But until we take and really get to the root, we're going to keep being faced with these same things. So I thank you so much for your dedication and commitment. Man, I'm gonna have to bring you on again because like this is something we could talk on and on
all
because it's needed. And this was a raw, transparent conversation today. This was no sugarcoating. So this is not for the faint heart. Because at the end of the day, I'm sick of us losing our students. I'm sick of us seeing the generation of broken potential. Like we're looking at the cure of cancer in our households every day, but because we don't know how to talk to them, because we don't know how to get healing for ourselves, we are destroying that inner child that just wants to live. So parents, understand our assignment that, yeah, we're not going to be perfect, but be present. Make sure that you become a reflection of the very thing that you needed. And more importantly, make sure that you're speaking to them in a way that you wish somebody was speaking to you. We've got to
right.
plant healthy seeds and we've got to water them every day. So, Coach Dent, you're the truth.
Yeah. I appreciate you.
And so,
I appreciate
where can people stay connected with you if they want to take and partner you up? Oh, you said it, like knowing, okay, I don't know how to talk to them. Mothers, you are never going to be able to be a father. Like, I don't care
yeah,
how well you can catch a football, you cannot. You would have had the assignment if that was for you. So knowing when
Never.
it's time to say, I need help, how can people connect with No Father, No Excuse so that they can take and partner with you to take and move forward to a better lifestyle for their families as well as themselves?
You can find us on Instagram, no_father_no_excuse. Or if you just type in No Father, No Excuse, it should come up. All of our stuff has been on Instagram. We're working on our website now. Hopefully that'll be out in February. Also have a Facebook page, No Father, No Excuse as well. All of our activities, anything that we do is up there. Or you can just message me directly. You can email me at no father no excuse 2014 at gmail.com. You can inbox me, Stephen Dent. I have a lot of people that just inbox me, and that's fine as well. So if you want to reach me on Facebook, my name is Stephen Dent with a V. You can inbox me as well. I imagine it'll be parents from Churchland. If you want to email me from at my Churchland email, my email is Stephen. I almost forgot. Stephen.dent at portsk12.com. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it. Stephen.dent at portsk12.com. So I'm an open book. I address No Father, No Excuse the same way I'm addressing this church in a position. Like Malachi said, whatever it takes. And that's what we doing. I don't, when people ask me what I do as a graduation coach, I don't necessarily put it into a box. I've got the green light to do whatever I can. So I address all of it the same way. So if you need anything, please feel free to reach out to me for sure.
That's dope, man. I appreciate you. Be sure to connect with him. The resources are here. He's coming knocking on doors. Like he has committed whatever it takes. So when you see somebody knocking, don't just look at them. Open the door, because this is not just a Band-Aid fix. This is relationships that we're trying to establish, partnerships that we're trying to establish, and support that we're trying to provide. So be sure, families, to connect. As always, grace and peace.